So I ferret out as much information as I possibly can on the sell side to understand how my client's business might create value for each individual buyer. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. After that, I say to myself, well, how do I introduce competition? And typically, I tend to take the approach of casting a relatively wide net on the front end. And instead of using formal bids, I like to use indicative bids. And you'll see this, it's prolific throughout investment banking. Great investment bankers are going to ask for indicative offers or indications of interest at the front end of the process. And the purpose of that is we want to introduce as many buyers as we can to the front end of the funnel. And we want them to put an offer on the business in round one. It's simply something that says, I will pay X for the business. Here's what I'll do with it. Here's how I'll finance it. Here's what I'll do with management. And here's what the regulatory constraints I might have. And we want buyers to provide a bid, do all on the same day, doing the smallest amount of work as possible, because if we want a more formal, like a full-on LOI or a more formal bid, it's going to require buyers to do more work. And a lot of buyers will just fall out of the process because they don't want to spend time, money, and effort attempting to bid on something that they don't know much about. And they don't want to incur the cost of figuring it out if they don't think that they're going to likely prevail in the process. So you want to make it very easy. And as far as process rules at the very beginning, that's the extent of the process rules. We're the sell side, we're setting the process. Here's the rules. 2 weeks from now, provide us an indicative bid. We've cast a wide net, we've got a wide funnel, come on in, bring them all in. So in this process, what we hope to do is we hope to get 10, 15, 20, maybe indications of interest. And it'll allow us to kind of understand where the market is at in general terms with regard to valuations. Now, in the case of Nomor, I was hoping to get 2.1 billion SEK or more, but when our indications of interest came in, they tended to cluster around 1.3 to 1.4 billion SEK. So substantially lower than where I wanted to end up. And quite frankly, that's okay. And, it's frustrating, I think, for clients. I deal with this on a day-to-day basis. When those initial offers come in, sellers get pissed. This is offensive. I can't believe it's so low. But at the end of the day, LOIs and front-end offers tend to be low because buyers don't know a whole heck of a lot about the business yet. And quite frankly, they're testing the water. I mean, why are they going to go all in on a first bid? Unless, of course, they want to preempt process. So in the case of Nomor, we did have a buyer that said, I want to preempt process. I want to shut down the process before other buyers have the opportunity to spend a lot of time, money, and effort learning about the business, only to increase their bid. So one of the acquirers stepped up and said, here is our preemptive bid. No one can pay more than us, 1.7 billion SEK. The client immediately responded, this is ridiculous for a preemptive offer. If you want to shut down process, I expect to see something north of 2 billion SEK, not 1.7 billion. So at the front end of this process, right after the LOIs, I had a conversation with that particular buyer and said, you didn't win. Like, clearly this is a low bid for a preemptive bid, and we intend to do substantially better throughout this process. Now, after indications of interest, your goal as an advisor is to try to whittle down the playing field as much as you can. There's going to be a lot of garbage in their companies that you really feel like had an analyst at 2 o'clock in the morning write up an LOI, just tendered it just to see what was going to happen. You try to whittle those down because as you move through the process, you want to boot potential participants from your process. Because at the end of the day, as you move this along, the price should be going up and the buyer field or the pool of participants should be getting narrower and narrower.